Welcome in everyone. In today's video, we're doing a map breakdown for Zero Sievert's second map called Makeshift Camp. Just like our last video, we'll be going over everything you need to know about the map, such as the major and minor points of interest, what kind of loot to expect and where you'll find it, and any enemies or bosses you might encounter while exploring. I'll also be pointing out some information in regards to some storyline quests along the way, as Makeshift Camp is where things start to get a little confusing quest-wise. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Makeshift Camp is a large map that was once an evacuation shelter but has since become a radioactive wasteland. The map is locked until you complete the third story quest requiring you to hunt some bandits in the forest. Makeshift Camp is the first map where you'll start to encounter significant radiation, so it is highly recommended to at least bring a few radiation pills. You can also use one of the radiation suits sold by the doctor, as they have very high radiation resistance, but they all have very low armor class, so you may end up having issues if you get into a fight. The one exception, as well as my personal recommendation, is the Class 5 SIVA suit, but it requires a lot of scientist reputation as well as a decent chunk of change to purchase. You can easily farm scientist reputation by completing the Networkers faction quests, which reset every in-game day, and just slowly save up for this amazing early game armor. The only drawback of the SIVA suit is that the doctor can't repair it directly, so you'd have to buy expensive armor repair kits until you've built a workshop that allows you to repair it cheaply with scrap. As far as enemies go, you'll encounter your usual wildlife like wolves and boars, the occasional mutant ghoul, and your hostile wandering hunters. You'll find a lot of Tier 1 and Tier 2 bandits guarding some of the points of interest, as well as Tier 2 and Tier 3 Green Army guarding their various outposts or roaming around the map. At the radio tower, you'll also encounter electric anomaly enemies which damage you when they get close enough. You'll also encounter some blinks and bigs inside the laboratory. For bosses, Makeshift Camp actually has two. First is Armin, who's armed with a Wintar BK and Class 4 armor. Armin randomly spawns and roams around the map and is specialized for ambushing his enemies. He's infamous for rolling up on players at the worst moment possible, so don't be surprised if he catches you off guard like a runaway freight train. On the other hand, since he constantly wanders and aggroes everything on the map, you may also just stumble upon his dead body near one of the lesser POIs. He has a small chance of dropping his armor, which is hands down the best Class 4 armor in-game since it has great stats and is still repairable by the doctor. Makeshift Camp's second boss is Oral, who guards the train station that's overrun by bandits. Oral is a sniper boss who is armed with an FDR DMR and wears Class 4 armor. He hunkers down in the northwest section of the train station, and there's a small army of bandits between him and the train station entrance, so be prepared for a big fight. He's capable of aggroing you from off-screen, so use caution when you eventually need to clear the train station for this quest. And speaking of the train station, it's one of the 4 major POIs on Makeshift Camp, which is always the large area directly on the western train tracks. The train station is blocked off until you've completed a few Makeshift Camp quests and unlocked the Clear the Way quest to eliminate Oral. There are about 20 bandits guarding the train station, ranging from Tier 1 to Tier 3. For loot, there's 4 small warehouses and the main factory, which mostly contain tool and electronic loot crates. But the majority of the loot would come from the random gear and valuables from the bandits and Oral. Since Oral is capable of aggroing you from off-screen, I'd highly suggest pushing through the train station by hugging the southern wall as you move to the west, utilizing the cover as you close the distance between you and Oral. The second of the 4 major POIs is the Motel. The Motel is identified as a slightly janky gray square on the map. The Motel is also blocked off until you finish the quest Motel Part 1, which is given to you by the Green Army after completing the aforementioned Clear the Way quest. At first, the Motel will be overrun by ghouls, which you're required to clear out for the quest Motel Part 2. You'll also have to retrieve a document from a body in the southeast room of the motel. Once that's done, the motel will be occupied by bandits. There is a decent amount of loot inside the motel, consisting mostly of filing cabinets, duffel bags, and the occasional safe or medical bag. The third major POI is the radio station. The radio station is identified on the map as a large gray square with a smaller brown square inside of it. It's a much smaller POI than the rest, but has some pretty good loot, as there's about 4 electronic boxes that spawn here. On top of that, the electric anomalies that guard the radio station are simple to take down and drop a handful of blue crystals that sell for a good amount of money. Inside the radio station is our last major POI, which is the lab. It requires a keycard to access, which is sold by the barman once you've completed the quest Laboratory Part 2, a quest chain that's unlocked after completing the aforementioned Clear the Way quest. You can additionally bring the laboratory supply keycard after completing that quest as well, which unlocks a room that contains the majority of the lab's loot. Inside the lab is pitch black, which won't be a problem even in early game if you just put on the Night Owl perk. There are a ton of spiders, mutants, and infestations in the lab, so be ready for lots of close quarters combat. Throughout the rooms, you'll find some filing cabinets, electronic, tool, and medical loot crates. But the real lucrative stuff is in the northwest area behind the locked supply door, which contains a lot of safes, weapon, ammo, and attachment loot crates. Just be careful of the blinks that are locked inside this room as well. Also, do note that the spider eyes sell for a decent amount of money if you still have some space while leaving the lab. There are also 2 more locked off sections in the lab, mostly for quests. The first one is a locked room in the northwest for Laboratory Part 3. The keycard for this room is actually located just a short walk away on a body. Inside this room, you'll find a big and an interactable area for the quest item. The second additional locked area is for an endgame quest called Psi Helmet Part 2. You'll need the laboratory elevator keycard to access an elevator in the northeast near the supply room. This lower area is filled with about 100 ghouls and 5 infestations, so you better come prepared with lots of ammo and repair kits. In the final room, you'll find 3 bigs, so good luck. There's actually a lot of good loot in this area, consisting of lots of medical and tier 2 ammo boxes, as well as a few boxes filled with various repair kits. The final room also has a lot of purple crystals that sell for a good chunk of change. It's up to you to decide if culling the horde is worth the effort, however. With the major POIs out of the way, let's quickly cover the handful of lesser POIs on Makeshift Camp. You'll find a few cabins scattered throughout Makeshift Camp that may or may not be guarded by bandits, which have a few lootable boxes on the outside and some filing cabinets or bags on the inside. You'll also find a number of outposts defended either by bandits or Green Army soldiers. There are a good number of lootable boxes here consisting of electronic, tool, medical, and attachment boxes. Some of these compounds also have 2 smaller lootable warehouses inside. And remember, if the outpost is defended by the Green Army, they'll have no problem with you simply walking in and looting everything. There are a number of trailer parks sprinkled throughout the map, also defended by either bandits or Green Army soldiers. These areas normally have a handful of electronic, medical, and attachment boxes. You will notice that it's slightly irradiated here with a few high radiation areas within each compound, so do mind your radiation levels. And speaking of high radiation areas, there are a number of bar junkyards scattered throughout Makeshift Camp that have off-the-chart radiation levels. You'll need to have a radiation suit to explore these mazes, or be willing to walk out with more bleeds than you can count. These junkyards have a lot of electronic and tool loot boxes scattered throughout. There's also a number of anomaly fields scattered throughout Makeshift Camp, as well as all future maps. These anomaly fields are radioactive areas that are filled with semi-invisible anomaly traps that will damage you if you get too close. These dangerous fields contain valuable crystals that can be used for crafting or sold for some good money. To safely navigate these fields, throw markers with the G key to determine a safe path through the crystals. There's no limit to the number of markers you can throw, so toss away. And our last lesser POI is actually one of the most important. There's a trader on the map called Mr. Junk, and he sells a lot of useful loot and every type of scrap which can be used for base upgrades, crafting, or weapon and armor repairs. He's a bit hard to find as he's located in a sewer manhole, so it'll take some luck to find him. Once you do, however, he'll be marked on your map for all future runs. He completely trivializes the need for scrap as he sells hundreds of pieces for extremely cheap and refreshes every in-game morning around 7 AM. And that's all we've got for Makeshift Camp. If you guys found the video helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments if you guys feel like I missed anything important, or feel free to ask a question about some Makeshift Camp quests that you're struggling with. Good luck out there, and happy scavenging.